Welcome back to Bison Literacy. Today, we will be talking about whether social media platforms have a right to censor content or does it violate individuals' freedom of speech. These examples are based on opinions of the speaker and facts coming from the First Amendment.
Social media platforms generally have the right to censor or restrict content within the scope of their terms and service. Social media platforms are private entities, and users agrees to adhere to certain rules and guidelines when they sign up for these platforms. The term of service outline the acceptable use of the platform and often include provisions about content that may remove or be restricted. These guidelines are intended to maintain a certain standard of conduct, prevent abuse, and ensure the safety and well-being of users within the platform's community. These are examples of hate speech and discrimination. Social media platforms commonly restrict the content that involves hate speech, discriminatory language, or something that promotes violence against individuals or groups based on attributes such as their race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or other protected characteristics. This proactive stance is aimed at preventing the dissemination of harmful and offensive content that has the potential to contribute to real-world harm, discrimination, or creation of hostile online environment. By doing so, these platforms seek to uphold a standard of inclusivity and safety for their users. Now we're going to move on to harassment and bullying. Social media platforms often censor or restrict content that involves harassment, cyberbullying, or the targeted abuse of individuals. This measure is in place to protect the users from harm, maintain a positive online environment, and discourage behavior that can lead to psychological distress or threats. By taking action against such content, platforms aim to foster a space where the user feels safe and can engage in a positive and respectful interactions. This contributes to the overall well-being of the platform community and helps to create a more constructive digital environment. These are examples of graphic or explicit content and what they mean. Social media platforms commonly have guidelines in place regarding explicit or adult content. This type of content may be restricted, flagged, or subject to age restrictions to commonly with community standards and legal requirements. These measures are implemented to create a more controlled and age-appropriate online environment, particularly considering the diverse user base that may include individuals of different ages and cultural backgrounds. The aim is to balance freedom of the expression with the need to maintain a platform that is respectful, safe, and aligned with social norms and legal regulations. Users are typically expected to adhere these guidelines and ensure a positive and inclusive digital space. In conclusion, these discussions often involve considerations about who decides the limits of acceptable content, how these decisions are made, and the potential impact on diverse perspectives and voices. Striking the right balance between preserving and a healthy online environment and respecting the user's rights to express themselves freely is a complex challenge that social media platforms continue to grapple with. And the ongoing dialogue around these issues remains a critical aspect of the evolving landscapes of online communication.
It's essential to distinguish between government restrictions on speech, which can implicate constitutional protections like the First Amendment in the United States, and content moderation by private entities, such as social media platforms. Constitutional protections typically limit the government's ability to infringe upon free speech rights, but these protections don't necessarily apply to private companies. Social media platforms are private entities, and users agree to adhere to their terms of service when using their platforms. As such, these platforms have the right to enforce their content moderation policies to maintain a certain standard of conduct and protect their user communities. These are examples of private entities and freedom of speech. Social media platforms, being private entities, are not bound by the First Amendment, which safeguards freedom of speech in the United States. This constitutional protection generally pertains to government actions, not the decisions made by private companies. Private entities have the prerogative to establish and enforce their own rules and guidelines for the use of their platforms. Users, upon agreeing to the terms of service, willingly accept these rules when engaging in these online spaces. This distinction underscores the independence of private entities in defining and implementing rules within their digital realms, while acknowledging that these rules are subject to public scrutiny and ongoing discussions regarding their impact on free speech and public discourse. These are examples of creating a safe environment. Content moderation is frequently employed by social media platforms to establish a secure and considerate online environment. This involves the removal of content containing hate speech, harassment, violence, or other types of harmful behavior. The objective is to promote a positive user experience and mitigate the dissemination of content that may result in real-world harm. Now for public perception and accountability. Social media platforms function within the broader societal context, and the decisions they make regarding content moderation can carry significant societal implications. Ongoing discussions center around the platform's responsibility to maintain transparency, fairness, and accountability in their content moderation practices. To wrap up today's episode, social media platforms possess the right to moderate content within their spaces, but discussions about the implications for freedom of speech are intricate. The private nature of these platforms and the voluntary acceptance of terms of service agreements by users set them apart from government actions directly linked to constitutional rights. The challenge is to strike a balance that fosters a positive online environment while upholding the principles of free expression. Thank you for joining us today on Bison Literacy. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. We'll be back with more insightful discussions on important topics. And until then, take care and stay informed.